All right, by now you guys have definitely heard the news. Trump wants Canada to join the US and become the 51st state.
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state.
Which is pretty wild, right? But it got me thinking, all the other politics and drama aside, what would that actually look like for car guys like us? So today we're gonna take a deep dive and look at what this would mean for current Canadians and Americans. Okay, let's start with the benefits. When I started writing this out, I made a list of pros and cons. And while I was doing the pros side, I started to realize that there were a lot more benefits than I had initially expected. And to be honest, if this were to happen, there's some perks that will really help out Canadians, and I don't know how enthusiastic Americans will be about them. Now, while we talk about this, I'm gonna try to remain as neutral as I can. I'm not gonna weigh in on what my political beliefs are, whether I think this is a good idea or anything like that. I'm just gonna try to stick to the facts. But I am really curious what you guys have to say about this. Do you want Canada to be the 51st state? Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this whole situation. Now, if you're anything like me, you're just a regular dude who's trying to build some cool cars. I try to make videos that dudes like me would enjoy watching, so if you find this video interesting, it really helps me out if you'd consider subscribing, or even just checking out some of the other builds I have on my channel. Now, on to what you're really here for. The biggest and most obvious one is gonna come as no surprise to Canadians. We've all been there. You just got all your new parts dropped off, you're basking in the excitement of whatever it is you ordered, and then bam, you get hit with the duties. Sometimes it's the day of, sometimes it's a month later. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it feels like 5% of the cost, sometimes it's 50%. I have no idea. I know there's a system to it. I can't make sense of it. It feels like a gamble every single time. And I'm not talking about the tariff stuff. That's a whole different ordeal. But we get duties on car parts that we have to pay anytime parts come across the border from the US. There's also massive shipping costs, and some companies just straight up won't ship to Canada for whatever reason. So that would be a huge change. No more import fees, no more customs, just good old-fashioned American domestic shipping, baby. And this would probably bleed over to brick and mortar stores as well. Canada has never had Harbor Freight. I've always been jealous of the cool tools that you guys have. We'd either start getting Harbor Freight up here, or it'd be easier to go down to Harbor Freight and get them. On the flip side, you guys would have access to Princess Auto, which is sort of our equivalent to Harbor Freight. It has less tools, but it has more home-related stuff. It's not quite as cool as Harbor Freight, but I still can't trust myself to go in there without buying something. The major downside to this is I expect parts would probably go up, or there's gonna be some shortages to start out. Just think, guys like me, we've been drooling over Motion Raceworks, companies like that just won't ship to Canada. All of a sudden, the floodgates are open. We've got a massive increase in demand, and initially at least, the supply is gonna be the same. So either parts are gonna get more expensive, or there's gonna be some shortages to start out, which is a bummer for everybody. And this brings me to my next point, and I think this is the one that Americans will be least excited about, and that is project cars. If you guys thought COVID was bad for project car pricing, I think this would be a whole different animal. As I'm sure everybody knows, Canadian cars rust like they're getting paid to do it. I myself have driven across the country to get project cars from provinces that don't use road salt in the hopes of finding something that's a little bit less rusty. All the while looking at Facebook Marketplace from southern states of these beautiful rust-free project cars for pennies on the dollar compared to what we pay up here, just fantasizing about being able to go down and pick one up. The major issue is the border. It's a whole bunch of red tape to get cars across the border. If that headache was removed, I know I personally would be driving down to pick up as many cars as I could carry from southern states. And I'm sure I'm not alone. There's already a booming business of people shipping cars from the US up to Canada, and a lot of that revolves around them dealing with getting cars across the border. If the border is not there anymore, I think that there's going to be a huge industry of people shipping cars from the US up to Canada for project cars, and I think it's going to make the price of project cars go through the roof. If you thought the price of project cars was already bad, just think if there was another 40 million people who have only ever been around rusty cars their whole lives that suddenly have access to a whole bunch of these rust-free cheap project cars. I think the price of them is going to explode. On the flip side of that, Canada can import cars from Japan when they're 15 years old. And I believe in the US, you have to wait until they're 25 years old. So maybe we'd see an influx of people coming north to try to find their dream JDM car if the rust hasn't taken it already. You might be fine to come up to Canada to buy one of these fresh imports, but I can't imagine what a nightmare it's going to be trying to title this stuff for everybody. Think of VINs, titles, insurance, all that stuff is going to get so messy. We all love going to the DMV. We know how smooth and seamless that always is. Now imagine you've just gone up to Canada and bought a RX-7, I don't know, something that's 15 years old, and you bring it back down and you're trying to register it as a former province of Ontario vehicle. I can't imagine how much more paperwork there's going to be for all of this, for everybody involved. I'd be curious about the safety laws too. I know we're fairly strict up here, and I know in the States, there's some states that don't have hardly any safety laws. I know safety inspections aren't a thing, which, you know, if any of that bled over to Canada, it would be good for project cars, but it might not be so good for, you know, your loved ones on the road, some moron with a crappy old Canadian F-150 with a fist-sized hole in the frame driving next to you at 100. I don't know. That it would be great for getting some of these cars on the road, but maybe not for, you know, daily driving and just general safety. One thing I'm sure we can universally agree on is that it would be very nice to have access to all of these different motorsports complexes. Canada's got some incredible dragways. We've got some really good drift tracks. We've got tons of rally up here with all the land. And I know the US is basically the gold standard for drag racing. So it would be very nice to be able to go down, either race or spectate or whatever, without having to deal with getting a loosely titled race car across the border. So would Canada as the 51st state be a dream for car guys? I'm not so sure. I do think that there'd probably be more pros for Canadians than Americans, but I don't know. What do you guys think?